welcome to Lessons After Sessions. I'm Jen.
And Trev, welcome. Hi, Jen.
Hello. I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I'm wrestling with this like summer fall in between season thing. It's really got me frustrated in the wardrobe department.
I know. I know.
Oh.
It's so frustrating, and you never know like what to wear, and it's cold in the morning, but warm in the afternoon. And ugh.
Yes. Yes. It's throwing my whole game off. I need to set a boundary. Yeah, I need to set a boundary.
What's the boundary?
The boundary is that I will not try on more than 2 outfits in the morning,
I love that. That's probably good.
and that the internal boundaries, I will not allow myself to stress about this. In the big scheme of things, this is not significant enough that I'm going to let it impact my entire day anymore.
Okay, I love that for you. I want you to have that boundary because it really is not significant enough
I know.
to rule
I
your
know.
thoughts to the nth degree.
Great. I agree. So, okay. So in that same vein, we talked about boundaries last week, and kind of wanting to revisit that. And we talked about throwing out some scenarios that are frequent that we hear, that come up regularly, things that have happened in our own lives where boundaries have been necessary, and kind of walking through what those things look like as to how, where the boundary needs to be set, what it looks like when there's pushback, how do you hold it strong, all of those things. So,
Do you have a scenario, an example that we could like process together?
yeah, so here's one that comes up quite a bit, and it is a really hard one. So you've got an adult child who has children. Right. So there's grandchildren involved. And so say that I'm a parent, and my adult child with my grandchildren has really, really, over time taken advantage of me. So the relationship between us has become transactional, and my grandchildren are kind of being used as some sort of a pawn. Right. So if I don't agree to watch them, well, then you can't see them anymore.
Yes.
Right. So if you don't give me X, Y, or Z, well, then I'm not going to allow you to see your grandchildren anymore. Withdrawing, even the holidays, oh, you made me mad. So guess what? We're not coming for Thanksgiving, or we're not coming for Christmas. So it's just this ongoing kind of thing. And so then if I set a boundary down, that's the pushback I get. I get really afraid that I'm going to lose the relationship with my grandchildren. And so then I lower my boundary
Okay.
in order to be able to see them. And then the cycle continues. My
Then you
one.
feel resentful. Then you feel you
Yes.
taken advantage of. But wow, at least I got to see my grandchild on Thanksgiving.
Exactly. So my question for you is, my fear is if I set a boundary and hold it, for example, say it's financial. So say my child is coming to me and saying, I need money to pay my car payment or it's going to get repossessed. And this is the 10th time that they've asked for money for this car payment. And regardless of the other circumstances, at the end of the day, they're not holding true to their responsibility of adulting. And
Yes.
so I finally say, no, I can't. I'm not going to allow this to continue. It's not about the money. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to rescue you anymore. And so then their response to me is, okay, well then, we're just not going to talk anymore. So I'm going to cut you out of my life. You don't get to see the grandchildren. Thanks for nothing. And they walk away. How do you respond to that?
You let them walk away. You let them walk away. And it's so painful, but the boundary you're setting is not just for your personal peace, protection, sanity, financial um, solvency. It is also for them. Because if you continue to rescue them, if you loosen your boundary or don't have one in this specific example, you are not giving them, as you brought up last time, the gift of learning responsibility and how to provide for themselves. And unfortunately, if their response to that is so toxic and dysfunctional that they are going to withhold love, withhold a grandchild from you, there's nothing you can do because you can't be held hostage just to fulfill. That's manipulation, right? That's just pure manipulation, and that isn't good for you, and it's not good to teach them that that's how life works.
Right.
So, as sad as it is, you have to let them do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's usually kind of, and I agree 1,000 times over again. And then the response is I can't bear the thought of not having a relationship with my grandchild. And I know that if I put that boundary down and that child is withheld from me, that any chance at having some normalcy, having some sort of healthy relationship in their life is eliminated because that child will then be, I will be painted as the villain. I will be painted as this horrible person. There's all these scenarios that are created from this. I will lose them, and therefore I am abandoning this child.
And that is such an incredibly painful journey to have to grapple with. But deep down, it is an important one. It's one that you have to take because the ramifications of not doing that are, and I've seen it in other people's lives, going broke, not being able to provide for themselves because they're giving all of their money to this adult child.
Mhm.
It's okay, fine, I'll keep loosening that boundary and give you that money only to have them have another reason to now withhold the grandchild anyway.
Mhm.
Um, it's a never-ending cycle that nobody is going to win. And so you have to then go inward and deal with the grief of not having that relationship, always making yourself available. I mean, I would continue to send a text, hey, thinking of you all, love to see Lulu, whatever the grandkid's name is. Um, Let me know if you're ever free. Like, keep making that effort. Because another thing I often see is the person who has set this, conditional, I'm taking this away from you because you won't pay my car payment for the 10th time in a row, often relents on their own because they need help with a sitter at some point or whatever. But
Mhm.
the reality is you're going to have to grieve that it because you can always find a reason to say, oh, this is just too painful, I need to keep doing this.
Mhm.
um, you could find that to eternity and you could end up losing everything, certainly your sense of self-respect and peace for the
Mhm.
rest of your life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and my thought too is that if you do continue to lower that boundary, you're teaching the grandchild also that relationships are transactional. So even if you lose that relationship, the hope is that some point it comes back around, because at some point they become adults, right? And then if that parent is that toxic, then that relationship is not going to probably be healthy, and so the hope is that at some point, but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think you have to remember that walking away is sometimes the biggest gift of love you can give. And it's not only to the person, the parent, your child, but also to your grandchild, because they see and witness so and they soak everything in. So to break that cycle, I feel like you have to do that.
You have to set that boundary. You have to, because that's a very different scenario, right? That example versus an adult child who has not needed you ever, falls on time, needs some temporary assistance, never holds it as unless you do this, you're not going to get this. Obviously, that's a different scenario. The one that you presented requires a boundary, one that can't be loosened because, boy, you loosen that one and it's just going to be never ending.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another one that comes to mind that's been pretty frequent is in a friendship, a really close, long-standing friendship that you notice over time turns into a space where you're always listening and you're never asked anything about you. It's always about the friend. You reach out and they don't respond, but then when they reach out to you, you're held like, oh, you got to respond right away. Like you kind of feel over time, ooh, this friendship is definitely one-sided. And
Absolutely.
then you start to worry, okay, with that being a one sided friendship, I feel bad. I feel guilty. Have I done something? If I put these boundaries, what boundary do I even put up? What does that look like? I don't want to lose the friend. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that is, again, a situation where you have an honest, open conversation about, hey, here's what I'm noticing,
Mm-hmm.
and here's what I'm going to need moving forward for our friendship. And you stick to it. Here we are to those boundaries. And if that friend gets angry about this new boundary, even though you've explained it, you've been very genuine, that's on them, right? That's their journey to work through that. You don't go, okay, never mind. Nope, you stick to it. Um, if they're not able to do it, and part of your boundary was, um, I'm not going to be the one always reaching out to make plans.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need to in order for us to get together next time. And
Mm-hmm.
if that never happens, that never happens.
Yeah.
Because again, if you reach out for the 50th time in a row,
Mm-hmm.
what are you setting? You're showing them that, oh, it doesn't matter. She'll eventually or he'll eventually reach out and we'll do something.
Right.
Um, so again, you have to create a boundary, but the first thing is explain it. Explain where you're
Mm-hmm.
coming from, why it's, not working. The current situation isn't working for you anymore. How you envision things moving forward, what your new boundary will be, and then you stick to it. And again, this can often weed out relationships in your
Mm-hmm.
life. And you've got
Yeah.
to be okay with that for the sake of knowing that your boundary is a healthy one. It's
Mm-hmm.
not unreasonable, irrational.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy for everyone, and you're gonna weed through relationships out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a hard one because especially if, once you get into to spaces in adult life, sometimes it's kind of hard to connect with other people. And, a lot of it is because our lives are so busy and situational pieces come into play with families and other things and maintaining adult relationships is really hard. So if your circle is small, it may be really hard to let go of a friend that is in that small circle. You might not have a whole lot of other friends, but
Right.
I think that kind of makes room to, I think you're right. It makes room for other healthier relationships that, you can, and you never know. You could talk to that person about that boundary and they could say, oh man, I didn't even realize that that's kind of what I was doing. They could be different and respond differently. I think the heartbreak is the fear of them not doing that and the rejection that we may receive as a result of that. And I think you have to reframe that as exactly what you say. I'm weeding out this friendship that just wasn't for me.
Yes,
No bad feelings, no hard thing. We just didn't, we were sworn on the same page and that's okay. But
absolutely.
you got to reframe that.
And it leads me to another example that I hear a lot about, as far as you know, what works for me, what doesn't, is in romantic relationships. There are, especially when they're starting out, let's stick to that. Um, Boy, boundaries are that they're trying to be aligned all the time on what what this is going to look like, what I tolerate, what I don't. And
Hmm.
I have so many people struggle with, oh, but if I set this boundary of, you know, we need a label. We can't just be friends with benefits. If I do that, they're going to not, they may not want that, and then I'll lose them. And it keeps people in these really uncertain places for so long. And I think if you find yourself in that and you know that this isn't feeling good, I'm
Mhm.
feeling more stress, confusion, pain, that's when you know I've got to set a boundary.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, what would you do in that situation? Let's say you were starting to date someone, it's going well, you're talking all the time, but then all of a sudden there it goes quiet, it goes cold. And then all of a sudden they're back and it's really hot and they want to be around you and talk to you. And then it goes cold again. And you don't hear from them, or they're super slow in responding. What do you do?
Wow. And I'm glad that you brought up relationships because yeah, you're right. In that instance, I think you absolutely have to say, I deserve better than this. And so my boundary is that I need better communication. I can't just be your convenience side piece. Either you're on board or you're not. And I think that's again stating the clear conversation or stating it clearly in a conversation so that you're able to say, this is where I am and I'm not going to either you're in or you're out. And I think if that person can't commit, then you have to say, okay. And then when they come back, you have to be able to say, look, I can't do this. This isn't going to work for me. And it may work for you for someone else, but for me it's not what I need. And I think that's a big one too, is we often sacrifice our needs in order to what we're doing is we're keeping someone close so that we feel safe, so that we avoid rejection, so we avoid conflict, so we avoid all these hard, complicated feelings that we don't want to deal with. But what we're doing is we're setting up this relationship to be so unhealthy. And I see that a lot in romantic relationships, a lot in marriages as well.
Yes, because I think the irony in that is we're telling ourselves, right, that we're keeping this, we're accepting what this other person is giving because I don't want to be alone and at least this is something and I don't want to feel sad and rejection. And it's hard in adulthood to date and to find someone. But the irony is you're you're exchanging that for still feeling lonely, rejected, all the same feelings because this individual isn't at the same place you are. And so you're oftentimes left feeling confused. Why aren't they responding? Why haven't I heard from them in days? Oh, you're still feeling those things. And so I think that's where, and it kind of goes back to when do we know when to set a boundary is, are those feelings present and consuming? And am I feeling it more time than I'm feeling? Ooh. And if the answer is yes, then it's better to cut your losses, set that boundary, and say, here's what I need. Okay, you can't
Mhm.
provide that. Thanks for sharing. And go
Mhm.
find someone who will. Because for every person that won't, there's five who will.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Do you find yourself making excuses for this person over and over and over and over again? And in your heart, you can feel that gut feeling. Don't ever ignore your gut. Your gut is such a great indicator. But a lot of times we do because what our gut's telling us is different than what we may feel we need emotionally. So we
Yes.
ignore that. We justify it. We make, excuses. And you're right. You're just setting that the irony in it is phenomenal. But at the end of the day, it's better to be, you can't open another door if you don't close this one first. So the boundary is closing that one if it's not for you.
Yes. And that goes in romantic relationships, friendships, and family.
Uh-huh.
Those same principles and concepts as far as I need to trust my gut. And if I can feel that this is something that, this person's using me, or this person is toxic and presenting dysfunction,
Mhm.
you got to really look at how to set a boundary because you matter too.
Yeah.
You matter too. And actually first.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's funny as we talk about it, there's, we talked about last time, boundary check. And
Yeah.
so, I only got gas once this week, thankfully, but I did do my boundary check when I got gas. So here's what I kind of discovered about my own life and boundaries. I think is the communication piece. Is that I start to feel a certain type of way about something, whether it be like I am emotionally exhausted by this, or something rubbed me the wrong way, or I feel like I'm being overextended in one way or another. And what I tend to do is I stifle it, take a deep breath, and just forge forward. And I don't actually communicate that. And then what happens is I can sometimes feel a little resentment. Maybe my husband or my mom or someone close in my life builds a little resentment towards me because they can tell that I'm pushing them away, but I'm not saying why. And so my boundary check for myself was like communication. So my boundary is I need to openly communicate. And, boundaries don't always look like a line of saying no. They also can look like, hey, this is something that I fail to do. And my boundary is that I need to do that. And that boundary creates healthy relationships. So it doesn't always have to be a negative shutting someone out. Boundaries can look all
Absolutely.
different. Hmm.
That's such a great point. I'm so glad you said that because healthy relationships require boundary checks and a lot of communication all
Hmm.
the time.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's important if so many of us we're bothered by something but we don't say it and we just
Hmm.
keep going. But that person starts to feel it
Hmm.
and then they're left in the dark like what happened? And
Hmm.
so communication and the boundary for yourself is I need to communicate what's bothering me because I need
Hmm.
to give this person the opportunity to hear that, to maybe change something or acknowledge it. And that's in a healthy relationship. So you're
Hmm.
right. It's not necessarily boundaries are for here's this and either you accept it or you don't, then you're out the door. No, it's about um, setting boundaries for yourself and for others on how you need to be treated. And in a healthy relationship, that person will respond positively to it.
I agree. What came up for you when you thought it? Did you do any boundary checks when you got your gas?
Haven't gotten gas yet. I
Okay,
need to
okay.
though, because I'm kind of infamous for like forgetting. And then all of a sudden it dings and I'm like, oh, 30 miles still empty. Okay.
So
So I need to today.
maybe your boundary check is I'm not going to allow my gas tank to get to the point where it dings.
Ding at me. Yes, I failed that boundary a lot because I have set that for myself. But you're right. So I am going to reset on that one and I'm not gonna let it ding at me. That's my boundary.
There you go. There you go. Boundaries
Okay.
are kind of fascinating. I mean, I think we can twist and turn this a million different directions. And you don't realize subconsciously how many boundaries you do already have implemented in your life. And
Oh yeah.
they're just natural. Yeah. It's your do's and don'ts. It's your yeses and your nos. And those are boundaries, all of them.
Negotiables, non-negotiables. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad we had this discussion.
Agree. Boundaries are one of those things that you're right. I think we just need to continue to revisit them because as we kind of walked through some of these scenarios, they actually tie into some of the subjects we've already covered, which is like maybe the parental alienation and then also estrangement. I mean, that first example is 100% estrangement. That's where a lot, you
Yeah.
see a lot of estrangement brew from is the lack of boundaries. And so I think that's probably something we're going to have to revisit as we kind of continue on our journey of this wonderful podcast.
Absolutely. I'm riding the wave with you, girl.
All right. Sounds good.
Have a good one and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Bye.